Labels. I might need to go up some on mine.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
All right, we're good.
Okay. Good.
All right, today we have Dayna Ritchey from the Alzheimer's Association of Miami Valley and Cincinnati with us to kind of clue us in on some things that they provide associated with real estate and just their organization in general.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. I'm the program director in Greater Cincinnati and Miami Valley, which is what we call the Dayton area. I came to the association because, unfortunately, my mother had Alzheimer's. I was a business person. I worked for Procter & Gamble. I was out of state when she first started showing signs and symptoms. And then, long story short, I eventually made my way to the association as an employee. And in our programs and services across our 2 chapters, we offer a lot of care and support that sometimes families don't know about. And unfortunately, I was one of those families. I found out about the association when I decided to make a career change. And so we don't want those stories. We want more stories of, I trusted Tammy and I learned all about the association in addition to, real estate changes I needed to make. So one thing we always want to make sure people know about is our 24/7 helpline. One, because it's national. Because remember, when my mother was having problems, I lived in Arkansas at that time. So this is a national number and it's 24/7. Because if you've ever cared for anybody for any reason, you usually need help in the middle of the night.
Of course.
And a Sunday morning, times when nobody's available usually. So the 800 number is a good way to just reach us for any kind of resources, counseling, emotional support, care planning, all those things. So we always give that first. And that number is 800-272-3900. We also have some great resources on our website, which is ALZ, as in zebra.org, so short for Alzheimer's. And then locally, we always have some really great education programs. Not all our programs are about just caregiving. Some of our more popular ones are what are the warning signs. So what's the difference between normal aging and something I should talk to my physician about? A lot of times when people see me out with the shirt on, I get questions about, took me a while to find my car at Kroger and things like that. So that's a very popular program. There's actually things that can happen to us naturally as we age that look like dementia, but they're not dementia. So we also want to make sure people are aware of that because we've got to talk to our doctor.
Right. To
know the difference between urinary tract infection, brain tumor, and Alzheimer's, right? They can all look the same.
Because when people Google this stuff,
yes,
it's amazing what they could
brain
have.
Tumor.
Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness,
yes.
Why do we go to that far extreme?
Yes. It's never you have a thyroid issue because that's too easy, right?
Right.
So, yeah, we educate a lot on that. We educate on what research is showing are the best lifestyles for us to have to keep our brain healthy. Mm-hmm. We also provide support groups for family members who have a loved one that has dementia because it is a long journey. On average, people live with Alzheimer's, that specific type of dementia, 4 to 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Some can live 20 years. And there's a lot of ups and downs and plateaus. And so, going through that in a community that's going through the same things in some way, shape, or form can be really important.
For sure.
So our monthly support groups are a big draw. And then, something that we've restarted up here in the Miami Valley chapter, and we have over a dozen down in the Cincinnati area, are called social engagement programs, or sometimes they're called memory cafes. So these are great programs because they're people, by and large, that still live in their own home. Mm-hmm. With a loved one. So one of them has some type of dementia, still living at home, and there's no activities director there to keep them socially engaged. And social engagement is really important to your cognition. So these are really just cool monthly hour programs. Like one of them meets at the pizza parlor, Marion's up in Inglewood,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Because who doesn't like pizza?
Right.
So we pizza for an hour. We do some kind of project. They're like fun things that everybody participates in together. So one time we sculpted with marshmallows. So we can all participate because some of us sculpted, some of us ate them, some of us did other
It's just like
things
with kids,
them.
right?
Exactly. But they're really great places to get your loved one out in the community and do normal things, knowing that everybody else there kind of understands your journey, right?
And something to look forward to.
Yeah. So I did get to take my mom to one of these before she passed, and she didn't wear a blue name tag, and I had a red one. Nobody really knew. Now, with our ages, I think they probably knew, but sometimes there's couples, and we don't know who has the disease, and we don't need to have a fun time.
Right.
My mom had a little stuffed cat, Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty ate everything my mom ate, and my mom talked to Miss Kitty, and we didn't have to worry in one of these memory cafes that people would be like, she's talking to a cat. In fact, a lot of people liked her cat when we went to that. So everybody's kind of understanding. So these social engagement programs are really cool. We have a new one in Xenia that started at One Bistro, and then a great one in Springfield that's at the Cohatch.
Oh, okay.
So again, there are cool places out in the community where we can just do fun things together.
Well, we'll make sure that we put the links and things in our description on this video so that people can get to it, because that's probably an always changing schedule.
Yeah, we try to keep them monthly, like our support groups and our memory cafes. Let's say, it's the second Thursday of every month at 2, so something like that. But education, yes, that changes every month.
Awesome.
So we can get you that information, definitely.
That's very helpful. So obviously we have a lot of aging in place with senior demographic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of housing inventory being low, I caught an article this past weekend that I really want to say kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because it was like, why is there this assumption that our seniors don't have the ability to live in their home?
Right.
That, to me, isn't why we have a housing crisis. We have a housing crisis because our municipalities did not keep up with the production that was needed through COVID.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're behind the 8 ball. It's not
Yes.
because people decided that when they were 70 or 60 or whatever that magic age is, that people think, oh, well, they don't live in a house anymore, they don't need it, so it'll come on the market. I don't think that's fair.
Right.
And I certainly know that now that this is one of our leading numerical number of people involved in this demographic, our elderly homeowners are really being forced out or put in positions with health care that they have to give up the home in order to get the assistance that they need in a facility. And so again, that goes against your property rights, the whole thing that you really battle for, right? I'm not just in this for the sale of the property. I'm in it to make sure that homeowners have their property rights advocated for, and that is certainly in all of the classes of protected ages and demographics and all of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's really, it hits home. As you said, losing your mother and having that experience, it's a place that they feel comfortable. Right. So when you take them out of that environment, that's a lot of the disorientation I feel that comes along, and it seems to catapult problems.
Yeah.
So what can people actually look for, and what's the indicator that they really can't live on their own?
Yeah. So the short answer to that is safety, but let me go back a minute too, because my whole life, like, I have an MBA, I'm very well educated, but I know there's a lot of like mysteries out there around Medicaid, and very well educated people think, oh, well, if dad has to go in a nursing home, mom's going to have to leave the house so that he can go on Medicaid. And that's not true. And I know you know that that's not true, that if there's a surviving spouse to this person, there are a lot of rights to protect them. They'd have to do that the right way. So talking with an attorney, somebody especially in elder care, a really trusted realtor like yourself that knows a lot about that and can point them in the right direction. Like, first, don't make that assumption that we're going to have to sell the home because senior living's so expensive, and now where's dad going to go? Where's mom going to go as a surviving spouse? So don't, There's a lot on the internet, like you said.
Right.
So go to a local trusted source, like
Right.
yourself or an elder law attorney. Second, I think everybody wants to age in place. Like, my demographic is very specific in the senior community, right? So there are actually over 200,000 Americans that are younger than 65 that have something called younger onset Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
So it's not just senior citizens, but yeah, over 200,000 across 7 million people in the United States that have some type of dementia. So by and large, most of our folks with a type of dementia are senior citizens. But to your point, most everybody wants to stay in their home where they're comfortable. So think about how that could be possible. So for example, my mom, when she chose to downsize in the house that she chose, it wasn't really set up for her to age in place. And that's just not something she was thinking about or that we as a family even thought about. So
Right.
she had one bedroom. It was upstairs. The stairs were very steep. She grew up in a home like that, so she felt comfortable with it, but
Right.
we didn't know she was going to get dementia, right? What if she'd been wheelchair bound?
Right.
How would she get up there?
Right.
She had no place where somebody could live with her to take care of her because she did need eventually 24/7 care, and there was no place to move anybody in.
Right.
Because it was this cute little cottage that was adorable, but it really didn't meet her needs.
Right.
So again, having a trusted agent like yourself that can help you think about, okay, do we think stairs are going to be an issue?
Right.
We never know what's going to happen to us. Or
Right.
in this move, are we looking for a ranch? Or, things that you'll think about that we don't always think about as just the average consumers can be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does cost money to have someone, a professional, come into your home and provide care, but there's lots of ways that you can potentially handle that situation too. So again, talk to your trusted sources. And then lastly, safety. So safety is the main reason people would move out of their homes. And
Right.
sometimes there are potential solutions to that safety. So for example, my mom, she lived independently for 2 years. I have a sister. The two of us took care of her, but she stayed alone. It became a fall risk issue for her. Again, one bedroom up the stairs.
Right.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't know, I didn't even figure this out till I came to the association, there's a part of our vision that's controlled by our brain. So my mom was saying, like, something's wrong with my vision, and we went to all these eye doctors, and her eyeballs were fine. She didn't have glaucoma, she didn't have cataracts, her reading glasses were appropriate, like, everything was fine, but she kept talking about these vision issues. That's because there's a part of your brain, an optical part of your brain, that controls things like peripheral vision and depth perception and the ability to see different textures of a same color. So think about a lady coming down steps and all the steps are the same color. She has depth perception issues and can't see height differences of the same color, so she's gonna fall down the stairs.
Yeah.
So fall risks are a huge issue for a person who has dementia, more than even your average senior citizen. Again, we had a situation where there's really no control, but there's a lot of control over other safety risks in your home.
Right.
That maybe can be helped with handrails or taking up loose rugs, all kinds of things that you can do to help with safety. The other kind of safety concerns can be things like gas stoves, right? So those can be switched out with electric. My mom didn't even use her stove. We knew that was a safety risk. We knew she rarely used it, and we knew it was probably like a 40-year-old stove. And it didn't even really work well, which was, an obvious sign that she's not using this. She's
Right.
using the microwave. So, we turned the gas off. We did not tell her that. So you also have to kind of get comfortable with a few little therapeutic fibs, as we call them. It literally took her 6 months before she realized something was wrong with her stove.
Oh, wow.
And when she called me, She was like, I don't know if the pilot light needs to be lit. Well, of course, we knew what was wrong, but we send my brother-in-law in, and he's the one to turn off the gas. But he's going to try to figure out what's wrong with it. And finally, he's like, I don't know. I think we'll have to get a handyman. And I'm saying, Mom, this is like a 40-year-old stove. We probably just need to get a new one. She's like, gosh, how much do those cost? Well, I don't know, like $12,000. Like, I didn't know, but I inflated it. It's a number I knew she'd never want to pay. And then I said, so why, just out of curiosity, like, what were you doing? Why did you need the stove? And she was like, I just was really hungry for a grilled cheese. Oh. Well, there's this great restaurant around the corner, they make grilled cheese. Like, the real problem was not, I need a stove. It was, I was hungry for a grilled cheese, right?
Yeah.
So we can solve for those things.
Yeah.
So you need to think about that kind of stuff. And then wandering. Wandering's a big issue, or eloping, as some people say, leaving your home. And so you do have to think about safety protection there. I was lucky my mom really wasn't a wanderer. Unfortunately, my father-in-law also had a different type of dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and he was a wanderer. So we got to experience it with him, and he lived out in the country in Claremont County, and that presented with all kinds of other issues, but wouldn't have been helpful if he lived in the city and could have got hit by a car easily as well. So
Right.
You do have to think about those types of things. Is there a way to keep them safe from wandering, whether it's safety devices that you have on their body or in their shoe, like the little air tag things that you can use for your luggage. There's even special ones that you can find out there for citizens that are in an insole in your shoe and you can't feel them, but we can track people that way. Are there things we can do to certain doors to make it harder for them to get out, and not harder in a way that it's now a safety risk to everybody else?
Right.
But think about what I said about your vision issues. So if if this means you'd have a problem, for example, with lettuce leaves on a green plate, right? Different shades and textures of the same color. Well, if you have a black door, let's say, but your handle is gold, well, what if we covered that handle with a black towel? It's likely going to bleed in and your loved one can't find the handle. Now, again, not a good idea if they live alone, because
Right.
if there's a fire, how would they get out?
Right.
But if they're never alone and you have someone with you that knows and can see the difference, that might keep them from wandering outside that door. So you do have to think about those things smartly, and are there some things we can do to, keep it safe for them to live in home?
So what do you think are some real key early stage differentials? This isn't just normal aging behavior. This is maybe something that's really worth checking into more.
Yeah. So there's 10. There's 10 warning signs. If you go to alz.org/10 signs, you'll see them all listed there. Some of the more common ones are, for example, one of the big ones I saw in my mom was confusion around place, time, and day. So this is not, is this Wednesday or Thursday, right? Like for me personally, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are kind of the same.
There's all blur.
Yeah. I don't know the date as we speak, right? But we do know how to use our cell phones, our old-fashioned calendars. Like, we know how to figure these things out. So the knowing how to figure them out, or it comes to you in a shorter amount of time, like I couldn't find my car in Kroger. People say that to me, like I said, all the time, and I'll joke around and say, well, we're not still in Kroger, so I guess you figured it out. Like, the figuring it out is the key.
Okay.
It's frustrating,
Right.
because nobody likes to wander around Kroger, but we usually remember, I can honk the horn. I've got a key fob. I can honk the horn and I can find my car. Or, that's right, I came over by produce today. Like, it will come back to us. And that 15 minutes of panic is concerning, but the coming back is usually normal aging.
So an example I had was I had taken my family out. We went to a restaurant. It was very specific. It was very specific things that we did. My aunt was there. She was active. We did it. We had a drink and cheered and did all this. I happened to have taken a picture while we were there.
Yeah.
And 3 days later, we went back to the same restaurant with more family. And she's like, "Whoa, this is nice. I've never been here." And I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute. Yes, you've been here, and this is what you said you liked." And she's like,
Yes.
"No, I haven't. I've never been here."
Yes.
And even with the picture, she was still dogmatic that,
recollection.
"No, I've never
Yeah.
been here. I don't remember that."
Yes.
That's a little concerning,
That
right?
is concerning.
Yeah.
That is more of the concerning stage versus the, oh, that's right, I forgot
Yeah.
situation. The other difference in that scenario is not everybody, but most people, if it was the three of us together, even if I really didn't remember it, I'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, you showed me the picture." Silly me, of course. A lot of people with dementia, for some reason, dig in.
Ah.
They'll dig in and they're very sure of themselves. I have not been here before. Now, I don't know how that'd work with a picture, but, they can be like really stubborn and really self-assured.
Interesting. Okay.
And a lot of times they're frustrated because I know with my mom, she felt like the whole world is going crazy. Everybody is wrong all the time about everything. And it was really her, she was the one who was wrong about a lot of things, but she was constantly being told, "No, ma'am, that's not right," or "No, ma'am, it's March instead of May," or, things like that. And so she was just upset with everybody because she's like, everybody's going nuts here, but it was really her cognitive abilities that were kind of being diminished. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so we also talk about things like, well, you're sitting on your couch and you're listening to this podcast and you need a fork and you get up and you go to the kitchen and you get to the kitchen and what did I come in here for? What did I need again? Right? And then you're probably not going to remember till you get all cozy back on the couch and then it's going to come to you. And that's frustrating, but that's normal. More of a situation is you get into the kitchen, you need a fork. You don't know where they are. And this is a home you lived in for a long period of time, not one you just moved into, but you've always lived there. Or you're not even looking for places that make sense. Like you're looking in the freezer, you're looking in the microwave, or your family finds things like your shoes in the freezer or in the microwave.
Okay.
So putting things in very odd places. That's like, under what circumstances would you have put the forks in the litter box? Like those kinds of things are concerning. And then they can potentially cause safety issues too. Like my mother had told us, again, typical aging where we can have cataracts or issues, we don't feel comfortable driving at night. So she had told the two of us, like, anything after dark, y'all are going to have to come pick me up because I'm just not so comfortable at night. Years before that she was showing signs of dementia. And it was fine. It made sense. The straw that broke the camel's back with my mom, and it's a longer story, but briefly, she basically went to Thanksgiving lunch at 3 a.m.
Oh.
So think about what it looks like at 3 a.m. Would you think that's lunch? She is afraid to drive in dark. It's dark. And she not only attempted to go to 2 miles away to lunch at my sister's once in the middle of the night, 3 times, and was never at my sister's house, actually.
Wow.
Was at a home that we did not know the people. She had never been there before. They must have been away for Thanksgiving because they did not call the police on her. But it's more than just, is this Wednesday or Thursday? It's like, under what circumstances do you think that this looked like lunchtime? Like, we talked to her about that. And something that she could articulate really well was there were lots of warnings. She said there's like lots of bells going off in my head that something wasn't right. But what kept overriding them was this sense of my family's waiting for me. I got to get to my family. I'm going to be late, and it's about my family. And so every time she kind of talked herself into thinking, yeah, I don't have this right. I need to make a phone call and check this out. That urge that, no, I got to get there, this irrational urge really took over.
Interesting.
And she never actually called us. What happened is my sister called her when she didn't show up, and she was so livid she could barely talk to us because she stewed on this for like 6 hours, thinking that we were playing this cruel trick on her for Thanksgiving. So very irrational thinking as well can be a big sign or symptom.
So I know there's lots of research and lots of things that are going on. It's not like I don't want to say like a death sentence. It's something that needs to be treated with care from a physician. There may not be a cure, but we've certainly made improvements that way. Is it medicine? Is it, like you said, just activities that keep them busy? What really benefits?
Yeah, so dementia is an umbrella term. There's lots of different kinds of dementia. You hear so much about Alzheimer's because it's the most common type. I mentioned frontotemporal. My father-in-law had. Bruce Willis's family have disclosed he has that. So lots of different dementias, and they all kind of have their own treatment pathways. Since Alzheimer's is the most common, and by the way, the association works with all dementia, not just Alzheimer's. So if you're listening and you're like, well, my mother has vascular dementia, so they can't help us. Not true. Any kind of dementia, we can help your families. But when it comes to Alzheimer's, yes, there are some treatment options. There are only a couple, and basically they will, if they work in you, they will extend this early stage time longer, a period of months, maybe up to a year. And there's lots of caveats around it. There's lots of testing that needs to be done and considerations you have to take in as potential side effect issues. It's an intravenous drug, so it's usually given in centers where they'll do chemotherapy. There is a lot of research to try to get to a pill form of this drug. There was a lot of press at a time because CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, were not going to cover the treatment. They do now cover the treatment. A lot of private insurance does as well. But as you said, it's not a cure. And it really just keeps you in these earlier stages longer when you can still make your own decisions, have conversations with your family on, should we move and where should that be, have some high quality of life in that stage. So what's really important about that treatment is when you think there may be a sign or symptom, you must talk to your doctor because it's only going to work in people who have that earliest stage.
Gotcha.
So by the time we figured this out with my mom, because she'd been a widow for 25 years, she lived alone. Naturally, she was a hermit. She was, not a very outgoing person. So she was well past that stage once we figured it out. She was much closer into the middle stage of the disease. So even if the treatments would have been available at that time, by the time it all came together with her diagnosis, she would have been past that stage.
Gotcha.
So back to the Alzheimer's Association, you guys have something called the Home Secure Program?
So the Home Secure Program is actually through Montgomery County.
Oh, through
so
Montgomery
that's
County.
Their program, yeah.
So how do you guys work with that?
Yeah, so really the Montgomery County Treasurer just came to us and made us aware of Home Secure. So Home Secure is like a payment plan for people to be able to pay their property taxes.
Oh, okay.
And what their office was discovering was they had several situations where there were senior citizens not paying their taxes, and so they were taking the appropriate action then against the property. Once it got to a certain level, finally the families figured out Dad's not paying the taxes, and that was their first warning sign. So that's another one of not being able to manage money well, pay bills, falling for scams that are pretty loose. There's some pretty very specific scams out there now with technology. It's like, gosh, anybody could fall for that, but something that's a lot less veiled than
Yeah.
that. And so when John McManus's office was figuring out, oh, this is the situation. Well, we don't want to take property from someone who now we know has dementia, right? So they really wanted to work with us to get awareness of those payment options out there in the community. And we did an education program together that we plan to repeat here in future months around not only the tools that they have at the county office for payment plans, how you can check to see if you have a loved one that's in arrears in their taxes, all those kinds of things. But then we also gave education around these warning signs that we were
Nice.
talking about,
Okay.
because unfortunately in these cases that the treasurer's office had come upon, that was actually the first sign, was we're not paying bills and our home's going to be taken away from us.
Okay,
then.
that's a great partnership.
Yeah.
So if any of our viewers want to donate, do you guys have any local fundraisers or national fundraisers coming up?
Yeah, so our biggest fundraiser across all of our chapters, 600 of these walks to end Alzheimer's. So the walk to end Alzheimer's happens in the fall. In the Miami Valley area, we have 5 different walks. So our big one is in Dayton, and it kicks off at the Dragons. Site is where we kind of kick off, and then we walk through the streets. And so it's meant to raise funds as well as awareness for the disease. So if you go to alz.org, you can find your local walk. You can start a walk team.
Oh, cool.
We also have a fundraiser that's called The Longest Day. So some people are not walkers, and The Longest Day is all about summer solstice. So a couple taglines there. One is day with the most light is the day we fight. And another around the longest day, for a caregiver, someone who has dementia, every day is like the longest day because it can affect your sleep and all kinds of things, right? And so that's kind of a do-it-yourself fundraiser. So we have help around that and longest day managers that can help you through that. But let's just say, gosh, my grandfather was a big golfer and I want to do a golf outing in June to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association. That could be a longest day event then, and we can help you get started with that longest day team and, talk you through some of the things that you can do to get the best attendance and raise the most money. So a couple different vehicles.
Oh, awesome.
Cool ideas.
Yeah, so we end every episode with like a tip for our viewers. So if you could give our viewers any tip related to the Alzheimer's Association, dementia, your whole package,
Yeah.
like what would you say?
Oh gosh, there's so many tips, but I think the most obvious one is to ask for help, right? So we'll end it the way we started with the 800 number. Tammy gave me some great example, that great example with your aunt, right? Call the 800 number if you have examples like that and say, hey, do you think this is something I should really pursue, or does that seem pretty typical aging? Now, again, we're not diagnosing you over the phone,
Right.
We're always going to say lean in and go to the doctor, but we can, educate you on what are warning signs versus what's typically normal aging. So reaching out for help if you see signs or symptoms, reaching out for help if your loved one is clearly in the throes of the disease. Not everyone gets diagnosed, but you can get to the point where everybody in the family is like, yeah, she's got some kind of dementia. She won't go to the doctor, but we know. So we need a plan and we need a safeguard.
Right.
We need to do all these things we're talking about. So how do you do that? Reach out to the association. We can help you with that. Reach out to the association when you just don't know how you're going to do this anymore and you need a care plan, or you need somebody to talk through, like we were talking about. When do I have to move out of my home? Do I have to move out of my home? Where do I move? We have lots of resources and community partners who help with that as well. So just call us and ask the questions. You can call anonymously if you really want to, but we're not going to share your information with anyone outside the association, so it's always safe to call us. And that national number is 272-3900. You can call also and ask about local programming, some of the things we talked about earlier. They can help you find some of those education programs, support groups, and social programs.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for joining us today on the Realty Podcast. If you enjoyed the knowledge and entertainment today, please subscribe and share with your friends. We will be embarking on a journey that bridges the gap between realtors and clients, uncovering the heart and tea of real estate.